Hello, and welcome to today's Reset Room talk, where I want to talk about whether meanness is making us sick and present the case for radical compassion. And I'm going to give everybody some top tips for dealing with meanies. So in recent years, public discourse, online and in the media, has become increasingly polarised, with a notable rise in hostility, rudeness and even threats to do harm hammered out on a keyboard. Although cultural and regional contexts vary widely, overarching trends indicate there is growing intolerance of others in some areas, in particular, for example, towards immigrants. Is this because we're exposed to more and more people who are not like us? And is it because we are responding to a secret yearning to belong to a tribe of people who look, act and think the same as us? Whatever the reason, the result is not just uncharitable behaviour, but is outright meanness. I'm not saying this from a place of someone who is easily offended. I'm pretty used to being threatened myself and people being mean to me, especially during my time in the police, when I was responding to complaints from the public or answering 999 calls. I have a pretty thick skin. So I'm looking at this really from a view of personal and societal resilience, and whether this meanness is making us sick. The complexity of tolerance and intolerance reflects not just social change, but also a shift in how we understand what tolerance actually is. What was once considered tolerant behaviour may now be viewed as offensive, insufficient or even superficial, perhaps showing that a person is just being tolerant to be seen better by others, not actually what they really are. I guess we want people to be free to express themselves, but to do so without hatred. At the heart of this sort of cultural shift is the emergence of cancel culture, which is often defined as like a withdrawal of support, public shaming or ostracism of individuals due to objectionable behaviour or controversial opinions. According to research, cancel culture stems from legitimate social accountability, but it can lead to mental health strain for both the cancelled and the cancelling parties, the cancellee and the cancelled person. It fosters environments where fear, shame and judgment are prevalent, and where nuanced conversations are replaced by just kind of black and white, very polarised thinking and mob reactions. The bizarre juxtaposition, I think, is that while some people are cancelled for views, there are some formerly taboo subjects that are discussed with increasing openness. And I always think it's a little odd that our children are able to access pornography on their phones, and I think that's far more of a problem than somebody just having a view that we don't agree with. So while accountability is crucial, the methods through which it's enforced often cross well into the line of hostility, and we've seen it with, famous people sometimes receiving death threats because of their views. Excuse me, just having a cup of tea. There's also the phenomenon of the troll, which I think everyone is aware of what trolls are, but it's when meanness becomes a hobby, basically. It's a deliberate act of provoking or offending others to elicit a reaction. It's kind of the modern manifestation of meanness. Trolls often hide behind anonymity, some of them don't. They weaponise words and images to gain attention, power or amusement. And psychological research suggests that trolling behaviour in itself is linked to narcissism, sadism and psychopathy. But for many, trolling is just about disconnection, and a way really of expressing a dissatisfaction or emptiness just by using disruption. Trolls exploit the immediacy and reach of digital platforms, so they're often online. But sometimes, even we see it in some politicians, they deliberately say things that they know is going to get a response from people when they're public speaking, and they leave a lot of emotional damage in their wake. For victims of trolls, it can lead to real anxiety, fear, and a reluctance to engage. For society, it kind of normalises cruelty and erodes the quality of our dialogue, of conversation. And whilst trolls feed off reaction, you've probably heard the expression "don't feed the troll," which I'll talk about again in a minute. Their behaviour, it's a symptom of kind of broader cultural sickness, I think, one in which kind of empathy and kindness is sacrificed for entertainment. It's just entertaining to be mean and horrible. So meanness, both overt and subtle, has begun, I think, to infiltrate not just our digital interactions, but our workplaces, our communities and homes, and it's making us unwell. So how is it making us unwell? What's the biology of being mean, and how does it affect our health? So when we experience or perpetuate meanness, so that's when we receive meanness, or when we are mean, our bodies react biologically. There is a stress response that, once a life-saving tool in dangerous situations, becomes chronic when we are continually exposed to negativity. One of the key hormones involved in this is cortisol. You may have heard me talking about cortisol before. It's the body's primary stress hormone. Elevated cortisol levels are part of a fight or flight response. Very useful in emergencies, but really harmful when activated persistently all the time. So frequent experiences of anger, resentment, hostility, it just keeps our cortisol levels unnaturally high. This leads to a lot of health issues. So what health issues does high cortisol lead to? Cardiovascular strain, increased blood pressure and a risk of heart disease. Cognitive issues, difficulty concentrating, memory problems and impaired decision making. Digestive disturbances, we kind of have an upset tummy or irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, or some dysregulation of your appetite. Mental health challenges, you can have heightened anxiety, depression, emotional fatigue and sleep disruption. You can have difficulty falling or staying asleep, which can lead to further health problems. So there's quite a lot of bad side effects to raised cortisol levels. So when we dwell in or we contribute to toxic environments, online or offline, we're subject ourselves to others to this physical and emotional toll. It's worth remembering that if you suffer from any of these symptoms I've just mentioned, I'm not saying that you're mean. I'm saying that if you have a negative mindset and engage in mean or deliberately negative interactions, then the cortisol involved in that is not going to help you. So I'm not saying that if you have IBS, then you're a mean person. That's not the way around I'm trying to explain. But research shows now that it might not be your fault if you're mean or intolerant. There's new evidence to suggest that there is a ripple effect of rudeness, or a self-perpetuating cycle. So I've been looking at research by Christine Porath, which shows just how contagious and damaging rudeness can be. Her studies show that even witnessing incivility, now this is a word that I actually didn't really know what it meant until I worked in policing. It just means being rude or not being civil, incivility. So just witnessing incivility is enough to reduce cognitive performance by 20%. So that's like your brain function, basically, if you're surrounded by people being incivil. And people just exposed to rudeness, they become less motivated, expend less effort, and are more likely to quit their jobs. So it's time to get off certain social media platforms that are rife with incivility. Just imagine Just reading other people's rude and mean comments about others can have a bad effect on you without even getting involved yourself. Porath research also indicates that workplaces characterised by incivility suffer tangible losses. Performance declines, employee absenteeism rises, and customer satisfaction dwindles. Rude actions don't just stop with one incident, they can spark further negativity, creating what Porath calls a self-perpetuating spiral that erodes morale and overall organisational health. So in other words, being rude impacts individual and organisational resilience. So this explains a lot for some of the industries I know quite well. This perpetuating spiral isn't limited to professional environments. In families, communities and social media platforms, one unkind comment can lead to escalating tension and conflict, often completely disproportionate to the original cause. I have to say, I probably pick up some negativity when I look at local Facebook groups, and I look at a fairly innocent post by somebody on a local Facebook group, and it just rapidly turns into a kind of bizarre heated exchange between neighbours. So I have to stop being a voyeur in that, and stop being entertained, because I might catch the rudeness. But it is funny just how rude, outright rude people can be to one another. So why are they mean? Why are people mean? So understanding the root cause of meanness is essential, and this is what I'm all about, finding out why people behave like they do. According to research, people may act mean as a defence mechanism to protect themselves from a perceived vulnerability, rejection, or some past trauma. Unresolved emotional pain can manifest in irritability, sarcasm, or aggression. I have to say, guilty sometimes when I have been in the past, to say better now, under a lot of pressure. And in fact, when I was building up to being completely burnt out, being sarcastic and irritable was definitely something I recognise. This is where I'm interested. All these things are familiar to me in my world of nurturing resilience in people. Evidence shows that some people struggle with internalised self-criticism. So they're mean because they're criticising themselves inside, and this negativity just spills outwards. So they have a problem with themselves, which they then deflect onto others. They often say that things that annoy you the most are actually things about you that you don't like. Some may have poor role models or live in environments where rudeness is normalised or even rewarded. Often meanness isn't about the target at all. It's just a reflection of the speaker's internal struggles. This doesn't excuse harmful behaviour, but it does explain it. And understanding breeds compassion. Not a passive, boundaryless way, but in a way that allows us to respond from a place of emotional intelligence rather than escalation. So while meanness triggers stress responses, kindness and compassion have the opposite effect. Acts of compassion activate the brain's reward centres and increase my favourite hormone, the bonding hormone, oxytocin, and actually reduces cortisol levels. So it not only releases oxytocin, but it reduces cortisol. Gratitude practice have been shown to improve sleep, enhance optimism, and strengthen our immune function. So saying thank you can boost your immune system. Amazing. Multiple studies have shown that those who regularly help others experience greater life satisfaction and even longer life expectancy, which is great news for life's givers. Helping others gives a sense of purpose, boosts self-esteem, and fosters social connection. These are all key components for good mental health well-being. Furthermore, research shows us that compassionate workplaces are more productive, innovative and resilient. We just talked about toxic workplaces, so let's talk about good ones. that can be good for your health. Personally, I have witnessed a bit of an odd mismatch with people who work in public service, who are life's givers, carers and supporters, and yet despite this, their working environment is toxic. This creates a huge contradiction and can really erode away good intentions. We know that employees who feel appreciated and respected are more likely to stay, contribute meaningfully, and take initiative in the workplace. Yet often the kindness is extended to the public being served, but not to each other, not to our colleagues. The same principles, by the way, also apply at home and in our communities. So you may think that gratitude journaling sounds a bit fluffy, and I have to say I have only been journaling for a few months now, about 6 months, and I was very resistant to it. I felt like it was a bit self-indulgent and too inward-looking for me. But there is actually evidence to suggest it's a scientifically validated tool for improving mental and physical health. So that is just when you write down every day, if you can, things that you're grateful for. And do you know what? I've started doing it and you just never run out. You never run out of things. You know, sometimes I'm grateful for my nice warm slippers or a cup of tea. Other times it's bigger things, you know, like that I live in a peaceful environment and my health is good. So who knew? Gratitude journaling. And if you're stuck with the idea of gratitude journaling and you really don't like the idea and it's not your thing, you could try some random acts of kindness that is just giving something without expecting anything back. Apparently it works in a very similar way. Maybe you could do journaling one day and a random act of kindness the next. So it's critical for me to clarify here that radical compassion is not about being a doormat. It does not mean suppressing valid emotions or tolerating abuse. On the contrary, it demands emotional strength, clarity and communication skills. Radical compassion, as I see it, means setting firm but gentle boundaries. It means speaking truth without shaming. It requires us to approach even difficult conversations with the intention to understand and not to punish. By the way, I should say here that managing difficult conversations is another reset room talk of mine, and it very much relates to resilience. A resilient person is able to manage difficult conversations well. So in practice, radical compassion can look like saying no without guilt, offering constructive feedback without belittling somebody. And again, providing reflective feedback is something I've talked about and can help people reframe feedback if it's something that you struggle with. Holding others accountable while still recognising their humanity. This is the true art of communication. It's not avoidance, but assertiveness laced with empathy. So, I said I was going to give you some top tips on dealing with meanies. Unfortunately, kindness does not always beget kindness, so this is how I believe we should respond when we encounter rudeness or hostility. Here's a few effective strategies. So, number 1, don't take it personally. Most meanness reflects the speaker's issues, not your worth. So it's about them, not you. Are you talking about yourself? Stay calm. Reacting with anger only fuels the conflict, especially if they're goading or trolling you. Set clear boundaries. Assert yourself respectfully and clearly. Use humour where appropriate. Well, that's number 4, by the way. Sometimes humour just diffuses tension, but it has to be appropriate, and never should your humour be angled to laugh at the rude person or to point score or make jokes at their expense. That's not going to resolve it. That's not going to make it go away. That's humiliation, and that's not going to work. Number 5, practice empathy. Try to understand where the other person is coming from. Use active listening and paraphrasing, saying things like, from the language you're using, I can tell you're very upset about this. It won't always work, but with your empathy you'll be able to guess where it does. Respond with kindness, not to appease, but to de-escalate. 7, seek support. Talk to someone you trust for perspective, or invite others into the conversation only if you think it would be useful. Number 8, reflect rather than retaliate. Ask, what is the most constructive way I can respond to this meanness? And number 9, I think this is an important one. Know when to walk away. If someone's being really mean, just remove yourself if you need to. Walk away if the interaction becomes toxic and just protect your energy. Don't let someone's bad day ruin yours. As I said earlier, the expression, don't feed the troll. Sometimes people are just deliberately seeking to goad you, or they want a toxic exchange because they kind of enjoy it. So in that instance, it's just turn your back and just walk away. So you might want to give it a try. In the week ahead, just observe yourself and what is getting under your skin enough for it to formulate into rudeness or meanness or even anger. Take a pause and ask yourself, why is this particular issue bothering you? Is letting it bothering you making you unwell? Where do you feel it in your body? Whereabouts are you feeling unwell? You also might want to observe others getting irate and mean. Think how you can de-escalate without patronising them, and I'd love to hear how you get on. So just to kind of reflect, we do live in an era of immense change, complex technological advancements, uncertainty and emotional overwhelm. In this climate, meanness may feel like a form of control or self-protection, but it's ultimately destructive. It corrodes our relationships, our work, our health and our social fabric. Radical compassion is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's definitely not about being weak. It's a bold decision to respond with clarity and kindness, even when anger might be easier. It's a choice to preserve our own well-being, protect our communities and build a more resilient and humane world. So let's challenge ourselves to be the antidote to the culture of cruelty, not with naivety, but with courage, insight and radical compassion. Thank you.